Humans are weird. Petting it, the setting red sun caught in every branch of the primordial forest and cast its diffused glow on the already red fur of Prince Tricklick. He was currently adjuring a milky white apron so it sat more easily over his wings. His companion, half his size and several shades lighter, not to mention bearing none of the battle scars that crossed and reclosed Tricklick's war-worn flesh, gazed at him with skepticism pouring out of his beady black eyes. "You," the flight second said. "You are going to be a nurse?" Tricklick hissed in passive irritation as he pulled out a tin of polish to add a little scented shine to his 3 remaining sensory horns and ease the ever-present pain in the 5 stumps. "No," he said firmly. "I am simply volunteering my off hours to give aid and comfort to our allies who have sacrificed so much to our cause." "Oh, I would never question how much we owe the humans," the flight second said grimly. "Granted, they gained from this campaign too, but we would have never reclaimed this world without them." "So you sound my depth," Tricklick said. His voice distorted slightly as he examined his teeth, still needle-sharp, he thought proudly, in the reflection on the back of his tin. "They call us hellbats," the flight second said bluntly. "I have seen humans who have been allies for months burst out screaming when a flight breaks from the ground in front of them. We literally," he held up his wing claws for emphasis, "resemble nothing so much as the messengers of their underworld." "Your point?" Tricklick asked blandly as he checked his appearance on more time. "What?" the flight second demanded. "In the name of the first flight, makes you think that the presence of our most feared warrior would offer injured humans any comfort at all? Most likely they will just sit there in mortal terror and fear of offending you." "One would think," Tricklick admitted. "But that has not been the result observed by the medics." Before the flight second could respond, Tricklick leapt off of the branch they had perched on and flew in lazy spirals towards the tent on the forest floor, marked with a bold red cross. The flight second hissed and followed him. However, there was no chance to begin the conversation again before they fluttered to a stop outside of the insect-repelling netting. They slipped through the barrier and landed on the massive desk that served the human medics. The one on duty smiled up at them from his paperwork and waved them in. There was only one human in the medical ward today, the flight second saw. A young human, one of the new batch, he supposed. From the pale tint of his face and the audible gurgling from his abdomen, he had been bedridden for some digestive malady. The flight second grimaced, but Prince Tricklick flew fearlessly up to the human and landed on the edge of the bed. As the flight second had expected, the human started violently at seeing Tricklick. "Greetings, friend Smithson," Tricklick said, dipping his head as he landed. "Are you ready to begin your therapy again?" To the flight second's surprise, the agitation almost immediately left the human's face, and he nodded eagerly. "Sure thing, Commander," the human began. "Ah, stit!" Tricklick hissed in remonstrance. Right, no ranks in here," the human said with a laugh. "One mustn't offend the medics," Tricklick quoted in all seriousness. "Now let's begin." He hopped over and laid himself flat out on blanket that covered the human's knee. The human reached out a hand hesitantly, and then gently lowered it to stroke the exposed length of fur between Tricklick's scared wings. The flight second watched in astonishment as the human relaxed back against his pillows with a happy sigh as he continued stroking the fourth in line to the throne. "Now where was I?" Prince Tricklick began when the human seemed to have achieved a proper pace. "Ah yes, 5 trills and the second prince of the Golden Cliffs. Now it was the latter days of the Great Migration." The flight second blinked in astonishment for a moment, then shook his head. Tricklick had always been a bit of an odd one, but how was he going to explain this in his report? One didn't just upend 2 decades of xenopsychology research with a field note that says, "and they like petting furry things." Humans are weird. What rock? "Did you file the samples you collected?" Fourth Sister asked as the human walked past. The human paused in her movements and frowned in a way that was supposed to indicate thought. "What samples?" she asked. Fourth Sister clicked her mandibles in confusion and raised her head frill a touch. "You were out on the river's edge collecting mineral samples for the majority of the morning," Fourth Sister said, waving her pale green hands in the direction of the door. "You must have at least 80 kilos of sample material in your quarters." 80? The human frowned and then her face relaxed. "Oh, you mean the rocks?" "Yes," Fourth Sister said with a sigh, letting her frill drop back to lay along her neck. The rocks. Please remember to label and report them correctly. Yeah, no. The human shook her head. I wasn't collecting those for samples for the base. It was a private thing. Oh, Fourth Sister said, pausing the movement of her fingers over the data pad and waiting for the human to continue. However, the human merely shrugged and moved away. Fourth Sister watched her disappear down the corridor with confusion. She considered pursuing the matter, but her data pad chimed to remind her of her next task, and she made a note to bring up the matter again at the midday meal. She easily found the correct human again at mealtime. This human wore a rather large array of outer ear ornaments. Fourth Sister was quite proud of herself for not flinching back in natural horror from the visual of cold steel piercing not only the outer protective membrane, but also the cartilaginous substructure. It was still hard not to think about it as she carefully folded her legs around the human-formed bench. "Greetings, human," Fourth Sister said. The human looked up from her meal, and one of the hairy, protective eye ridges rose, seemingly disconnected from any other movements on her face. Fourth Sister fought down a shudder of revulsion and made a note to research what the gesture meant. "Susan," the human said. "Excuse me?" Fourth Sister asked. "My name," the human said clearly. "What I wish to be called is Susan." "I see," Fourth Sister said. "Susan. So about our earlier conversation—" "What earlier conversation?" the human, Susan, interrupted. "The one where you informed me that the rocks you collected were not scientific specimens," Fourth Sister clarified. "What about it?" Susan demanded. "If they were not specimens, then what were they?" Fourth Sister asked. "What business is that of yours?" Susan asked, her voice dropping into aggressive tones. "It is my business to catalog all scientific specimens that are collected by the base population," Fourth Sister explained. "The Ranger Corps requires a designated specimen monitor. They didn't have one on Rough End Base," Susan observed. "It only applies to bases that are near a population center," Fourth Sister explained. "It is to prevent accidental contamination." "Oh, makes sense," Susan said with a nod. "Well, I was just collecting some rocks for a private merchant project. I checked all the regulations, and the local rivers are all clear for the locals to interact with." "A merchant project," Fourth Sister repeated as she entered the data in her pad. "You are correct. There is no need for me to report that." "Good. So we done here?" Susan asked. "Formally. Yes," Fourth Sister answered. "However," her frill raised in curiosity, "what value do these rocks possess?" "Oh, nothing intrinsic," Susan said, her face curving into a grin. "I am making pet rocks for the tourists." "Pet rocks?" Fourth Sister asked. "Yeah." Susan stooped and dug into a bag by her side. "I bought some printer time and printed out paper boxes and bedding and hand-wrote the instructions on the side." "See?" Fourth Sister bent over the box and tilted her head from side to side to get a good look at it. It was a basic carrying box with alien pet rock printed on the front. On the side were instructions for training and care for the rock. Fourth Sister considered for a long time and lifted her head slowly away. "Tourists pay money for this?" she finally asked. Susan burst out in laughter and tossed the box and its contents back into the bag. "Yeah, the humans who come through the city love this sort of thing," she said. "I am thinking about painting green antenna on it to make it more alien." "Humans buy rocks of no intrinsic value," Fourth Sister said softly. "If you package it right, they do," Susan said cheerfully. "Now I have to go get the rest ready to take them to my vendor." Humans are weird. Fairy circles. "And why did you bring me up here, 8 clicks?" Quilkich demanded, as he peeped his primary eye set over the edge of the sensory array. "Way up here? You have more experience observing humans than I do," said the young winged who had lured him up here. "I require your observations on an odd behavior pattern. Unless they are eating or not eating, something there is not much I can offer," Quilkich said as he secured his grip on the surface with all 8 of his appendages. "Please stop making the air currents worse!" "There!" 8 clicks landed beside Quilkich and focused his binocular vision on a patch of ground far, far below them. Quilkich took in the scene and tried to note anything different. However, the patch of ground indicated by the winged was indistinguishable from all the others to the nutritional anthropologist. "I see no humans, and therefore no human behavior to comment on," Quilkich snapped out. "But you do see the fungal growth?" 8 clicks asked eagerly. "What fungal growth?" Quilkich demanded, edging away from his mammalian companion. "Oh, right," 8 clicks muttered. "You Trisk have poor vision. Our vision is perfectly adapted to our preferred habitat." Quilkich snapped out. Our pattern recognition at reasonable distances— Yes, yes! 8 Clicks rudely cut him off. There is a fungal growth. That hexamartin species is fruiting, and it formed a surface-visible pattern. Here. He projected an image of what Quilkich assumed was the ground below. A ring of the fungal fruiting bodies had indeed sprung up. Are the humans eating them? Quilkich asked, curious now. No, they are poisonous, I think, 8 Clicks said. But how can I, like this? The winged shifted the projection so that it overlaid the reality that Quilkich was seeing below him. The ring was indicated by a cluster of blue dots against the dusky orange of the ground cover. Now just wait until the shift for lunch ends, 8 Clicks instructed. Quilkich was rather interested now, so he waited as instructed. The tonal alarm sounded for the end of the lunch cycle, and the humans and Shatar spilled out of the communal cafeteria. This was an interesting position to observe mass behavior from, Quilkich decided. Now keep an eye on the fungal growth, 8 Clicks instructed him. The mass of bipeds had reached the indicated spot on the ground, and Quilkich grew attentive as the pattern became obvious. The more brightly colored Shatar paced across the space without pause. The humans, however, even with their lesser mobility, swerved to avoid passing through the circle formed by the fruiting bodies. Fascinating, Quilkich clicked softly. The pattern holds too, 8 Clicks said eagerly. I have recorded this behavior in over 20 locations. Is it conscious? Quilkich asked. Sometimes, sometimes not, 8 Clicks said. When it is conscious, I have noted them indicating body language that the Shatar's lack of avoidance behavior causes the humans distress. However, the majority of the times it appears to be an instinctive reaction. They do eat some fungal fruiting bodies, Quilkich observed. Perhaps it is simply an ingrained nutrient maximization behavior to avoid damaging fungal bodies that provided sustenance. That is a sound theory, 8 Clicks admitted. However, Quilkich prompted, even as he watched the flow of humans. When I brought my observations to human friend O'Byrne, he did not wish to answer, 8 Clicks said. You must have misunderstood him, Quilkich protested. Friend O'Byrne has almost no social inhibitions. Why, he spent the better part of a day discussing reproduction with me. I am aware, 8 Clicks said, flaring his wings in agitation. That conversation was recorded. But I assure you, he has inhibitions about this. I was able to ascertain that it involved a human superstition. A superstition? Quilkich asked eagerly. There was a vast blank of knowledge on current human superstitions. While that was well outside of his focus, it was still a fascinating topic. The only specifics he offered was the term fairy circles, 8 Clicks continued. And he seemed terribly embarrassed by the observation. He displayed that odd behavior where he answers the question at inaudible volumes and in a direction away from you. Ah, Quilkich muttered. We must proceed carefully. Indeed, 8 Clicks agreed. Why won't humans walk through a fairy circle? Humans are weird massage security. Security! The frantic voice of one of the winged species echoed over the comms, high and piercing. Under normal circumstances, the Shatar currently at the security desk would have found the tones annoying as it echoed off of his frill and gave him a pounding headache. He idly wondered if skulls made of true bone resounded less to high-frequency noise. Today of all days, this 40-second interruption of his office duties, it made him want to sick his blessed grandmothers on the irritating little scientist. There is a medical emergency in the humans' quarters, the flitting little scamp cried out. A horrible low moan of pain filled the sound waves over and around the high-frequency language of the hellbats. Oh, how he wanted to dismiss the interruption with a click of his mandibles. However, there were rules and regulations for a reason. This might be different than every other call today. It might actually be a medical emergency unrelated to the sounds. Please give me the details, he said curtly. There is the most horrible groaning and howling noises coming from the secondary workroom, the hellbat declared. The Shatar on security duty rubbed the ridges around his faceted eyes with a sigh and carefully took the details. When he had enough and the hellbat paused, he interjected quickly. These sounds have already been investigated and explained, the Shatar clicked out. The humans are performing a medical relaxation ceremony to disrupt the buildup of— He checked the notes the human medical professional had given him. Lactic acid in their muscles. They have assured me the sounds are a necessary part of the massage. There was almost a pause as the hellbat considered his words. Did they run out of painkillers? The hellbat asked. Do they need us to fire up the chemical mixers? It was explained to me, the Shatar said. that the procedure not only required full sensory alertness, but that it was, in totality, pleasurable. "So will this be going on for some time?" the Hellbat asked cautiously. "Several more hours," the Shatar said grimly. "Each human apparently gets a turn under the care of the masseuse." "It is a lovely day outside," the Hellbat offered. "I think the flight will rest out in the forest. There is a small camp set up out there already," the Shatar stated with a sigh. "I am the only non-human left in the base." "Hopefully your office is soundproofed," the Hellbat said before signing off without using the proper procedure. "It is," the Shatar muttered to himself. "Now, if only no more concerned crewmates open the comm lines."